right, good morning. Welcome to the Allison Loves Math podcast. Today, I'm so excited to introduce to you Tim VanNorman. He's the co-host of the Higher Ed Tech podcast with Professor Brent Warner, where they talk about the ins and outs of technology in higher education. He's also the instructional technologist at Irvine Valley College. And from a personal standpoint, he is the person who has taught me every single thing that I know about teaching online. So,
oh no,
I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
So thought today we would talk about some tech tips for making distance learning easier, especially for teachers. I know all the teachers at this point have pretty much jumped into teaching online. You probably have a feel for what works and what doesn't, and it might be the right time to maybe make some changes to try to make teaching a little bit easier and maybe less time consuming, a little less stressful. So I don't know, Tim, I guess, well, actually, before we even jump in, tell me a little bit about your podcast first and how you sort of got into it and what you do, and then we'll jump into some tech tips after that.
Okay, so our podcast is the Higher Ed Tech Podcast.com, all one word. And Brent Warner, one of the professors of ESL here at Irvine Valley College, came to me about a year and a half ago now and said, hey, would you like to do a podcast? And I said no. And then he proceeded to suggest that I would do it with him. Now, he's done a number of different podcasts. He was closing down a podcast at the time and starting a couple of new ones, and was wanting to co-host rather than host. And I understand that completely. It's a lot of work to put it together, even when you have somebody else you're working with. So, and Allison, I'm sure you understand that it's a lot of work to put together, especially by yourself. So we sat down, we figured out a whole bunch of stuff. And at the beginning of August last year, we released our first podcast. After about 3 or 4 recordings of that podcast. And so we've developed it over time. That particular podcast is about using technology in higher education. So we talk about things like Canvas and different tools inside of Canvas. We talk about different quiz tools that are, we did a whole series on different quiz tools and stuff like that. So it's about technology in the classroom, and especially right now, classroom is virtual for a lot of people. And so my job as instructional technologist at Irvine Valley College, I work with all types of classrooms and technology in those classrooms, whether they are virtual or face-to-face. And so that gives me a nice place where I can discuss rather than train on these different tools.
Perfect. And so what are actually, I'm curious about the quiz tools. Do you have a favorite quiz tool, actually?
I don't get to play with them very much. So, because unfortunately, I don't get to teach other than teaching teachers how to teach using these tools. I don't get to teach. So I did before coming to IVC. I was a part-time faculty member at a technical school. And so I did use Canvas in that environment, but that was completely live. And I could not have the students take tests or do assignments through Canvas. So because many of them didn't have computers at home. So in that environment, I learned to use Canvas, which was it really did make a huge difference. But now I'm helping people even move beyond what I could do before. So I love that. So there's a lot of different tools. I don't necessarily like a particular quiz tool. I'm the type of person who wants to find the right tool for that person or for that class. And so while I like certain things and I don't like others, that doesn't mean I won't recommend something I don't like to somebody because that's the right tool for them.
Right. No, that makes sense, right? To go for the easiest thing for that teacher in that situation, right? Because I remember, in your teaching online course that I had taken, we learned a lot about how to create quizzes and stuff in Canvas, and I love that. I love that capability in Canvas. But I was teaching my class through my math lab, right? And so, and they have everything sort of pre-set. All you have to do is sort of go in and tweak the tests that are already there, and the students were already doing their homework in my math lab and stuff. And so it was almost easy, it was easier just to sort of link that to Canvas. So I ended up not needing it, even though it was very helpful. So I definitely just sort of going for whatever's easiest, right?
Well, or whatever makes the most sense. It might not be easiest, but yeah, whatever makes the most sense in your environment. And dealing with 500 faculty, that can be it could be varied a lot.
Yes. So. Yes, I can imagine. What was it like? Do you mind if I ask, what was it like having everybody jump into online learning in the spring and trying to get everybody moved online sort of overnight? How was that experience for you?
I had 3 weeks warning. I actually did.
Okay.
I had warning, and it was 3 weeks before our spring break, and when I was told what was going on and what was expected, I said, okay, here's my goal. My goal is to not have to come back from spring break. And that basically is exactly what happened. We did not come back I missed my goal by 1 day. We shut down the campus the day before spring break because it was a Friday. Other than that, so I had thought I would have spring break to work on things, to finish things off. My goal was to be done before that, which I was. I was that 95% done before that. I didn't realize I was actually only about 25% done. So that week I did 8 or 9 different 2-hour sessions with come and listen to Tim on this topic and stuff like that. And then the following week, even the first week of school after that, I did another 5, I think. Some of them were on topics and some of them were just open. What questions do you have? And so it was a lot of work. What I find is that that's a time when individuals need hand-holding, and that's really hard to do when every individual needs hand-holding. When
everyone needs it at the exact same time. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, but it all worked out. People survived. Some people didn't think they would, but people have survived, and now it's going better. I would say that just now I'm finally coming down off of that rush that I've been at since March.
Since March. All right. So, what are some of the tech tips that you have for teachers to make distance learning easier for them?
So, let's take 2 different types of teachers. One is going to be maybe a homeschool type situation where you're teaching just 1 or 2 students, and another would be where you're teaching a class of multiple students. And the reason I separate that is because while there is overlap, there's also a whole lot of distinct differences from what I can see. Also understand that I come from work in a college level, so some of my tips might not be as useful at a lower level, but just to understand that, number 1, understand that you are probably doing something new, and so let your students know that you're doing something new, and don't make lots of major changes. Okay, what do I mean by that? I can give you 10 different tools to work with. I would suggest this each semester you do 1 or 2. That's it. You will have successes and failures. In fact, I often call it error and trial rather than trial and error, because if you look at it from okay, I could fail at this, but that's a learning experience and I'm getting better, then it's good. I have seen people use all kinds of different tools successfully the first time. I've also seen much more that somebody falls flat on their face. So and by the way, that falling flat on their face, I think, is probably a good thing. Success the first time is often really difficult because now the next time you expect that. If you work with like an instructional technologist, you work with somebody who knows what they're talking about on these different tools, that will help you. So a quick story, one of the professors here decided to turn on and try out Kahoot. And first time she's doing that in her class, I had worked with her. I had set the whole thing up with her, made sure everything was going to be right, and I stood in the back on my laptop and just watched. And Kahoot is one of these tools that you ask a question, the students respond on their device, and then the results come up on the screen. And all of a sudden I heard, yes, in the back. Now, this student had just sat through an hour-long class, and they were excited about a test. Is that bizarre to you? Because to me, that was just really weird. And at the end, now she had not asked anybody to give their actual name, so everybody was typing in whatever they wanted for their names. And at the end, she said, okay, and so won, and it was the name of a student. And this girl gets up at the front of the class and said, that's me. I'm like, who in your class would ever be that excited about taking a test at the end of the class and having paid attention during class? And how much you want to bet? I wasn't there the next class or anything like that. How much you want to bet that students are paying more attention the next class? Okay, because they got it. They saw that happening. So Kahoot, by the way, is free. I'm not trying to advertise things, but it's one of those things that I love, tools like that are free that you can use. Now, Kahoot works really well in a face-to-face class, but if you're really creative, you can do this in a synchronous class that is online as well. So synchronous basically just means like a face-to-face class that you're meeting through Zoom or Cranium Cafe, or there's a whole lot of other tools. Google Meet. Hey, I'm hearing about Skype and all kinds of different things being used for it. So being in a synchronous class just allows you to do some things that you are harder to do in an asynchronous class, where you're recording everything maybe ahead of time, and then they're digesting it and supposed to come back to you with answers. So there's lots of little tools like Kahoot, Padlet, and other tools that are really neat for use in a system like that. Flipping over to like the homeschool environment, that one I'm a whole lot less familiar with. I know a bunch of people who have done it, and so my thing that I would say is probably very similar to what I just said, and that is get to know somebody in your area who understands how that works and what you're doing. Don't be alone. Okay, you can be alone. And in a homeschool environment, I know a lot of people feel like they're alone and feel like that's what it has to be. That's really your choice. That's not the case. I know in our community where I live, there's whole infrastructure in place that works with homeschooling. Having that infrastructure help you can make it so that things like setting up a Canvas class so that you can use, so that you can teach your students, your children, through a process that they can get homework and they can do things and have it automatically graded. You could do that. There's also tools that are already, you can just purchase that help with all of that stuff. So there's a lot of different nuances, and I understand that I'm probably being very vague in all of this, but I guess the biggest tip is don't be alone.
Yes, no, I think that's great advice, and I like that both pieces of advice are general, but they're really helpful in that way, in that they're universal pieces of advice. I think, to sort of, what do you say, use a trial, right? Which I think I tend to think of that as experimenting, right? Experimenting.
Absolutely.
With tools and stuff, and I like coming into it with that idea, because you're not expecting it to succeed, right? You're just trying it out and you're going to see what happens, see if it works or not. And same thing, I think that the finding somebody who can guide you makes so much sense, right? Because it's almost like teaching at IVC, right? You can try to recreate the wheel and learn everything yourself about how to teach online, or I can go to you and take your course or ask you questions, and it just saves so much time and it makes the class better. And when you're homeschooling, it's the same thing, and it might not be as clear cut, right? You don't necessarily have your instructional technologist there with certain hours and a phone number to ask questions of, but you can find that for yourself. So I think that the first step there, if you're struggling with it, right, is to find out, where is that community, where is that support, because it is there. It's just a matter of finding it and setting it up for yourself. So I think that's great advice.
Absolutely. And to the other part with the testing, doing little trials, having the errors and stuff like that. One statement I've made a lot over the last 6 months is, if you have grace for your students will have grace for you. Okay. If you let them know. So Brent Warner, one of the things that impressed me before we started doing a podcast is he and I would test different things in his class. And so one time I walked into his class, probably one of the first times I walked into his class. He's like, okay, students, we're going to try this out right now. And there was no look of fear. The whole class was like, oh, okay, another day in the class. Okay, why was that the case? Now, this is English as a second language. So I could see where, man, oh, these guys, what are they going to talk about? All of that stuff. No, it wasn't a big deal. And what it did is it just made it really nice, because he already had built in a environment, a culture of testing things out, trying things out. This isn't always going to work. Let's see what happens. We're working together to accomplish this. And so when we had them do something and a couple of them couldn't do it, oh, okay. And it wasn't a fear. So build that into the culture of your class, and you can try things. But if you have a really rigid class and everything is going to go exactly this way, the moment something doesn't work, they're coming back to you going, well, that's your fault that it didn't work.
Right. And I think that one of the things that's really nice about that too is that you're teaching your students to try different things and to experiment, and that's really helpful for them, because it teaches them that, how they're studying for your particular class, that doesn't have to be set in stone either, and they don't have to be afraid of trying new things and having it fail, and it just gets them to sort of experiment in their own life, which actually ends up helping them a lot in your class as well.
Right.
And it's funny that you said that, actually, because that was sort of how I set my class up. As soon as we moved online, I sort of showed up on day one and I said, look, you guys, I don't know the best way to do this. And so we're going to try something this week, and at the end of the week, we're going to see how it works. We're going to keep what's working, and then next week, we're going to try some new stuff. And we just it was an iterative process. We gradually, week by week, got better and found what worked for me and what worked for the students, but it didn't happen on the first day, for sure. But that setting up that sort of experimental atmosphere, or whatever you want to call it, in the classroom definitely helped a lot.
Yeah, and that helps you, and that helps them.
Yes.
It helps them understand that students like to know that you're human. Okay, because if they see you as this perfect, always perfect, never imperfect thing, which we all know it doesn't exist,
Right.
then every time something doesn't go right, it dashes their expectations. It's hard for them. If, on the other hand, you come in from day one and you're going, hey, I'm not perfect, I have never done this, let's try it. And at the end of the 1 or 2 tries, you go, you like it, you don't like it, no, okay, it's gone. And by the way, even if it worked in your last class, okay? And the reason I say that is because often teachers expect that something that worked before is going to work again. But what they don't realize or don't think about in that situation is the fact that it's a completely different class, different group of students, different everything. And so what worked perfectly in the last one may bomb completely in the next one.
Yes, I always find that interesting, and I think that's a good expectation, because I feel like I found that a number of times in different classes where something worked so well the previous semester, and so I'm super excited about it in the next semester, and then it is a bummer, right? When you're like, I don't know why, but you're right. It's because it's a different set of students and a different class, and sometimes even actually it could be the same class, but because it's different students, there's just a slightly different atmosphere or vibe in the class. And so things just, work a little bit differently. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for all of these different tips for learning online. I think it's so helpful. Where can you just, let us know really quick, where can people follow up? Hey, sorry, really quick.
Yeah.
Let's singing for just like 2 more minutes, okay? All right. Where can people follow up with you and find out about your, podcast and training and stuff like that?
So podcast is www.higheredtechpodcast.com. And then if they want to follow up with me, they can email me directly at VanNorman, VanNorman @ivc.edu.
Perfect. And then I think one of the things that we were talking about before, because I know lots of people have lots of schools have sort of transitioned to Canvas, and you have a really great training at training.ivc.edu/Canvas-overview, and I'll put that in the show notes. But that can be really helpful if you're just getting started with Canvas to sort of learn how to set it up, and get going, all of those details.
And what at least some of their major components are.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim. And if you're listening, thanks for listening in. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks.